These are the 6 vital elements, the 6 things that I see in the ladies I treat who tend to find themselves more often in the mood. So from women in their 70s to ladies in their 20s, there are 6 themes that I see over and over again in the women I treat who are more often finding themselves in the mood. We're going to retake.
You to keep rolling.
Who? Penis. I've been working as a pelvic health physio for over 15 years now. So that means every day I talk to women about what's happening in their pelvises, what's happening with their pelvic floors, and what's happening in their more intimate lives and their sexual connections with their partners and with themselves. And I've realized over the years doing this work, there are certain elements, there's certain pillars, there's certain themes that I see over and over again in the women that tend to find themselves more often in the mood. And the longer I do this work, the more I think that libido and wanting to be physically intimate with another person or with yourself is actually linked to where and how you are doing in other elements of your life. So this idea of the erotic, this idea of where are you finding your joy, how in flow are you in other parts of your life, often then carries over to where you are feeling in terms of your sexuality and your sex life. So today, I want to share the 6 elements, the 6 vital elements that I see in the women I treat who are more likely to find themselves in the mood than not in the mood. Number 1, these women have something. So these are generally women in heterosexual long-term relationships. These women have something that is theirs, something that defines them and makes them separate from their partner. So this might be in their work, it might be paid work, unpaid work, might be in a voluntary capacity, but it's something where they get to shine in their own right and in their own lives that is very separate to their partners. So Esther Perel talks of how desire exists in the space between us, and also how when they've surveyed people who've been in long-term relationships and said, when do you feel the most attraction to your partner? When do you feel the most desire for your partner, toward your partner? People have consistently said, it's when I see her in her flow. It's when I see her doing what she loves. It is when I see her through the eyes of another. So if you feel you don't have something that is yours, that is something where you shine in your own light, separate from your partner, see if you can find something, even if it's just something small to begin with, where you volunteer, where you pick up an old hobby or love that you've had in the past, and see if you can just quietly begin to nurture something that is yours, that puts you in your flow, and that is separate from your partner. Because as our wonderful Esther Perel says, the desire exists in the space between us. The second thing that I see in my women who tend to find themselves more in the mood, and this might be ladies in their 70s or in their 20s, it's across all ages, is that these ladies regularly take part in some kind of physical activity or movement. So there is no perfect exercise. The best movement for you is the one you actually want to do and the one that you do go and do. So whether it's walking or weightlifting, hula hooping, or hockey, find a movement that you like and that you love and do it regularly, because this is something that that I see all the ladies I treat who find themselves more in the mood tend to have in common with each other. They have a physical movement that they do regularly that takes them out of their heads and into their physical bodies. Number 3. Ladies who tend to find themselves more in the mood have close female friendships. Well, I suppose it doesn't have to be female, but it's friendships where they are able to give and receive emotional connection with someone who is not their partner. Again, the wonderful Esther Perel talks of how ridiculous it is that we now expect one person to be our entire village, and how actually bizarre the notion is that we expect one person to be our greatest source of safety, co-parenting, intellectual connection and stimulation, as well as physical desire, sex partner. We need to make sure that we are not making one person our whole village and prioritize our friendships outside of our immediate relationship. So if you feel that maybe this is one of the elements where you have not been prioritizing, that you've not been prioritizing as much in your life, see if you can reach out to a friend. So if it's someone that you would normally like their picture on Instagram, send them a message. If you would normally send them a WhatsApp, see if you can call them or send them a voice note, or maybe see if you can schedule a coffee. But it is important that we have emotional connections in safe environments that are outside of the connection that we have with our long-term partner. Number 4, the ladies I see who tend to find themselves more in the mood when they've been in a relationship for a long time all regularly do some kind of what I call frivolous creative activity. So what do I mean by creativity? To be creative doesn't necessarily mean you need to be able to paint a picture or write a book. To be creative is to do anything that is not just for survival, not the day-to-day chores. It's about spending time doing something just because. So when I was explaining this to one of my patients last week, she said, "Oh, so you mean like the kind of people that'll lay a table for one?" And I thought that is exactly what I mean. Being creative for the sake of being creative. So you might find your creative joy in gardening or in the way that you dress. I have so many ladies who say, "No, I'm not creative at all." And I'm like, "But look at you. You look gorgeous. You're matching from your hat to your shoes to your handbag." I treated a 73-year-old last week, and she said, "Thank you, Lulu, because I must say I do feel quite strange if I ever leave the house without just like a few little bracelets and a matching necklace." And I said, "Well, that is why she's in her 70s and still has a great sex life with her husband. She is doing these little bits just for the sake of doing." So if you are finding that everything you've been doing in the last while has been more about the survival of day to day, it doesn't mean that you now need to take yourself off to an art retreat for a week, which, that would be great too. But what can you do that just adds a little bit of creativity or prettiness just for fun? To come back to that creative feminine energy is so, so important for all of us. And it's actually something I talk a lot about with the ladies that I'm seeing for fertility, with their fertility treatment. I explain how conception is really the ultimate act of creation. And if we can be more creative in other areas of our lives, then we are able to invite that more creative, fertile energy into our worlds too. Number 5, the ladies that I see who tend to still find themselves more in the mood, like another 71-year-old that I saw recently, understand the difference between spontaneous and responsive desire. And they know that the longer we're in a relationship, especially as women, the less likely we are to be feeling a lot of spontaneous desire. This idea of like, "Oh, I never feel like it." And then afterwards, I'm like, "Oh, we should do that more often. That was great," is so real for so, so many women. So the ladies I see that are managing this well understand that it is not an absolute passion killer or sign that there's something wrong in your relationship if you are finding that you need to schedule or prioritize intimate time, and they do it. So there's research that shows that couples who regularly prioritize intimate time together, so this doesn't mean that you have to be doing the actual act of penetrative intercourse if you are in a heterosexual marriage relationship. It is prioritizing connection time that might be with the goal of actually having penetration or might not be. But it's thinking of a regular routine where you are doing this. So I've got a lady, her and her husband go out for breakfast on a Friday morning because that's the day that there's no one else at the house, and then they go back home to be intimate afterwards. I've got other ladies who go out for dinner once a week, or they know that they schedule a weekend away every 2 or 3 months. So understand and know that it is so normal to be experiencing more responsive than spontaneous desire, and regularly schedule this time together. Number 6. My ladies that have, yeah, it's done. Yeah, sorry. Number 6, the hair, sorry. Yeah, cool, perfect. Number 6, the thing I see in my ladies more often to find themselves in the mood is that they have a degree of self-awareness. They have some kind of practice where they slow down, zoom out, reflect on themselves, and they can laugh at themselves. So again, this doesn't mean that you need to go off to a 5 or 6 day silent retreat, although that can be wonderful too. But it's about just having small, regular practices where you check in with yourself. And this might be as small as having a cup of tea and doing nothing else at the same time, or a meditation practice or a journaling practice. But it's ladies that are able to notice where their brains and minds tend to go, and then meet it with compassion and humor. Ladies who can laugh at themselves, laugh at the different elements of their relationship, and hopefully laugh with their partners too. These are the ladies that tend to find themselves more in the mood.